everyone, and welcome to another edition of Connecting with Kim here on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. I'm your host, Kim Droege, and we are so appreciative you joined us today because we have another great program for you. Before we get started, I also want to say that you can catch the audio of this show on Sun Radio 96.3 FM in Sun City Center and on your favorite streaming platform Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3:30. And I would also like to thank my sponsor, the Spring of Tampa Bay, for my on-air wardrobe. So the skirt, the top, my beautiful jewels that I have on are all courtesy, and my ring are all courtesy of the Spring Boutique, which is located at the corner of Swan and Henderson. If you have not been there, please go and visit them and patronize that boutique, because all the net proceeds go to help them provide sanctuary and services to the victims and survivors of domestic abuse, both women, men, and children here in the Tampa Bay area. So I'm so appreciative to them. Let me introduce my guest today. She's a returning guest to Connecting with Kim, but this is the first time here at Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. My guest today in the chair is Wilma Norton, who is the VP of Community Connections for the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thanks for having me back. We had a great conversation not too long ago, and I'm always happy to talk about the great work that our donors allow us to do in the community. So.
We can't talk about the good work of the Community Foundation enough, but before we begin, I always like to give my guests at the top of the show a few moments, and you can take as much time as you want, to share a little bit with our audience about your life journey thus far, because you just never know when someone shared something in your path the same.
Well, great. Thank you. I am a native of Kentucky. I come from a family that has been in Kentucky since before Kentucky was a state. So,
oh, wow.
38 years ago, I packed my car and moved to St. Petersburg and said I'm going to stay 2 years and then go back home. Here I still am. I spent 24 years as a reporter and editor at the St. Petersburg Times, now the Tampa Bay Times, and then I spent a few years at St. Petersburg College, and now I've just celebrated my 8th anniversary with Community Foundation Tampa Bay. So my entire career has been mission focused about telling, at the newspaper, a lot of my job was to tell stories of ordinary people. And then I worked at the college promoting open education for everyone. And then, of course, at Community Foundation Tampa Bay, we try to help people find their passion for their charitable giving. So it allows me to feed my own passion and tell stories about other people's endeavors. It's a great place to be.
It sounds like it. And, you know, I think that's a good place to start before we talk about specifics, is because unfortunately not everyone, I find it hard to believe, but not everyone knows about the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay. So let's just start with the basics of what is the mission of the Community Foundation. How does it work?
The mission of the Community Foundation is to make this a stronger, more vibrant community where everyone can have an equitable opportunity to live and prosper. And so that involves workforce development, it involves education, it involves support of the arts, everything that makes this the place where we all want to live and where I've chosen to make my home for almost 40 years. And so we do that by working with people who are charitably inclined, who want to give to the community while they're living. And then a big part of our job is to help people, to help facilitate their charitable legacy after they have gone. We build a relationship and act as advisors to them during their lifetime, and then they put their trust in us to see that their work in the community continues.
So, last time we were together, we spent a great deal of time, because we had also had Carolyn Neese on the show with us, talking about the mission of the Community Foundation, and we talked a little bit about some of the local projects. But today, I think that would be a good place to start, to talking about, okay, we know how the foundation works. We know that people give to the foundation to have their assets managed to continue their legacy. So let's talk about maybe some specifics, because, and also before we go on air, you and I were chatting about how successful the Community Foundation's been in the last couple of years, and I certainly want to give that a plug too.
Well, we have had a wonderful, actually 3 years. I mean, we've had a wonderful run in the 32 years that we have been in existence. But I think sometimes adversity, like we faced with the pandemic and other things, brings out that generosity in people even more. And I have said that our donors, our fund holders, the people we work with, have been investing their charitable money for a number of years just for the time when it is truly needed in the community. And the pandemic brought that out. We had record grant making in 2020. We had record grant making in 2021, and in our fiscal year that just ended June 30th, we granted out almost $70 million.
That's phenomenal.
A majority of that stays right here in our community. We serve the 5-county Tampa Bay region, Citrus, Hernando, Pasco, Pinellas, and Hillsborough County. Have a very strong presence in South Hillsborough, in the Sun City Center area. But we just could not be more proud of the people who have the vision to take care of the community where they have lived and worked and made their own prosperity.
I think it's wonderful, and as we were talking about before we went on air, it's also part of my estate planning process I have my list of charitable organizations that I want to receive whatever, and hopefully there will be, is left of my estate to further my legacy in that way, because I don't have any children, so I think it's important to give back to the community. So
and a lot of people that we work with directly are like you, who say, I don't want my legacy to end. When I'm finished here on this earth. And I had this conversation with a friend a couple of nights ago who's just about to turn 50. You know, this is not a conversation or a thought just when you're in your late life.
Right.
You know, it's something that we all think about now. And so I think some of the projects that we wanted to talk about today kind of bring that circle fully around. One of them, some of you may have heard of, is the Mary Petro Fund. In Sun City Center. And Mary Petro was a person who had lived in the community for many, many years. Not a lot of people knew her. And I think I didn't have the opportunity to meet her, but I think people would tell you that she might have been someone you would have thought needed some assistance. But she had this vision that when she was gone, she wanted to help other people in this place that had been her home. So she left her estate of a considerable amount of money to the Community Foundation and entrusted us to be sure that the proceeds from that estate help people who live in Sun City Center and Kings Point who need medicine and need food assistance.
Yes.
And so her legacy generates more than $100,000 a year that goes directly to help her former neighbors.
Wonderful. I know I'm involved with some groups. We do fundraising, and sometimes our fundraising efforts are given to the Mary Petro Fund because we want to keep continuing in that legacy. So we have the Mary Petro Fund, which we know about in our, we're going to talk about, one of the items was the Environmental Fund.
Yes.
And that's really high on everybody's list. So.
It's so high on everybody's list. And again, this is George and Mimi Frank, and I never had the pleasure of meeting George, but Mimi was a delight. She left us about 1.5 years ago. And she was, I think, in her mid-90s. And one of the things that studies always say is that if you're charitably inclined, you live longer. Well, Mimi is certainly an example of that. And she was very generous during her lifetime. Right before she passed, she said, I want to do something about the environment, and set up the George and Mimi Frank Environmental Endowment and placed, I believe it was $1.2 million into that endowment that we will in perpetuity, grant out each year to do projects in the community that support and better the environment. So one of the things this year that is going to happen is the Audubon Society is going to use that money to do some habitat redevelopment so that the nesting birds are protected, and there are just so many ways that you can think about protecting the environment, and we try to look for things that are innovative and also bring more attention to environmental causes and encourage other people to contribute.
Exactly. And that's wonderful. I know we were also going to talk about the Why Mama Education Initiative, because we all know that live in South County that some of the poorest schools in the Hillsborough County school system are in Why Mama, and I'm involved in so many organizations and feature so many organizations on this show that have specific fundraisings for those schools. So tell me about that.
Well, and I think that brings a lot of the elements of what we do into focus. We work, several years ago now, people were saying we need to do something for the children in Waimama around education. And we knew Enterprising Latinas was doing some things. We knew the Hispanic Services Council. We knew the school system, RCMA, Bethel, all of these
Shriners.
the Shriners, everyone was doing something. So we brought everybody into a room and said, how can we all work together? How can we build on what you all are doing? And one example of that was someone in the room said, you know, there's no VPK. There is no preparation for these children to go to kindergarten. And we know how important that is for all children, but particularly for children who English is not their first language. Their families may move a lot, not understand the systems.
Right.
There's no VPK. And somebody said, well, the school system used to do it, but nobody signed up. And so the Hispanic Services Council said, well, if they'll do it, we'll be sure that people understand what it is and sign up. And RCMA said, we've got a place for it to happen. And so these ideas and these brainstorming sessions started, and we had some funds available from one of our donors who had passed on, who cared about education and literacy. So the next thing you know, we have not only VPK, but a summer expanded program so that the children who were in VPK this year, next summer can come back post-kindergarten, and the next year can come back post-first grade to keep that learning going. And we've been able to provide Best the Book Bus to bring books in Spanish and English, and Giving Tree Music to come do music and drum circles.
I love it.
And just build this network of people who have circled around the community and are working together, because we're all stronger together.
Well, we are. We're better together, we're stronger together, and the coordinated efforts can just keep building on each other, and then we bring in more people into that effort.
And none of us needs to, you know, reinvent the wheel
Right.
or any of those kinds of things.
It's all about what's happening in the community.
And it's more economic. You know, you have economies of scale.
Exactly.
We have resources, both financial and connection, and so it's one of those. And there's a story of one little girl who came into VPK not speaking English, not really prepared for school. By the time she was in third grade, not only was she reading on grade level, she was in the gifted program. And so
Fantastic.
in all of these efforts, you say if there's one success, but we like to believe there are now 150 successes, just because people got in a room who cared and said, how can we work together to help this community and help the children of this community?
If you're just joining me now on Connecting with Kim, my guest in the chair today is Wilma Norton, who is the Vice President of Community Connections for the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay. And they do great work, and you should avail yourselves of understanding what they do. This show is a help, and also you might want to become involved with the Community Foundation. So we talked about the Environmental Fund from the Franks. We talked about the Why Mama Education Initiative. And I know, because I just happened to be on the phone with them on the way to the studio today, I know that you're working with the Sheriff's Department on some education and programs for the seniors in our area. So why don't we talk about that?
Sure. Jeff Mary came to us 5 or 6 years ago, very concerned about exploitation and fraud of anybody who lives, in our community,
Right.
but particularly people who are older tend to be more vulnerable in lots of ways because either because they're lonely or don't understand technology, or I know with my own mother-in-law, my husband said if anybody rang the doorbell and they were wearing a tie, they were automatically an expert.
Yep.
In whatever it was they had to say.
And welcome through the door.
Right, exactly. And so, so Deputy Mary came to us and said, we need to do something. How can you help? And so now for at least 5 years, we have, again, with a grant from some of the funds that our generous donors who had lived in Sun City Center left in our care, we have put on a seminar where the Hillsborough County Sheriff Office brings in speakers from the FBI, from the consumer reporter for one of the television stations, law enforcement, Deputy Mary speaks, and others, just about the things you need to look out for, and including some educational endeavors, that some flyers that go out into the community, some promotional educational collateral, brochures, and those kinds of things, just to try to keep that top of mind. Because just because you come to a seminar and you hear about the scam of the month or the day or the year, doesn't mean there's not another scam that's right on the horizon.
Well, you and I met at the one that was in Sun City Center earlier this year at the
Right.
community hall. We packed it, and to just give a shout out to our wonderful Hillsborough County Sheriff resource officer just for our community, Deputy Jeff Mary. We love him so much. He is such an asset to our community. You don't mess with our seniors. Jeff is passionate about this, and it always amazes me the amount and creativity of some of these scams. And I always think to myself, if these people were employed in the normal economy
For good.
I can't imagine how big the economy would be. And Jeff just is on this all the time. He's passionate about it, and I'm so glad that, like I said, I was talking to him in the car on the way to the studio, and I'm going to do a short video for him tomorrow with his captain just about this.
Well, and not to steal Deputy Mary's thunder, but when we first started the scams, the fraud, were very different. This year we talked about solar panel fraud is prevalent. It used to be water filters and roof coating and things like that, and I'm sure those still exist. But the one that was heart-wrenching to me was the rise in romance fraud, especially during the pandemic when those of us
we were isolated, we were lonely.
So if you were already isolated and lonely, and the people who preyed on the lonely during the pandemic, and it gave them an excuse to extend their scam even longer. And so to be able to get that message out, and to also, as part of this seminar, be able to say, we can help you find ways to be engaged and involved so that you don't fall prey to this. There are other ways for you to get involved in the community. Go volunteer at the emergency squad, and
it's amazing to me. I mean, people have actually become homeless. It blows my mind. But people have actually become homeless in the romance scams. They have given these people so much of their money and their assets that they are now in dire straits themselves. And you cannot, in some situations, I know I've had this conversation with Jeff a lot, you can't convince them it's not real.
Right.
I mean, and the other one is the Publishers Clearinghouse. Yeah.
You're right.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
If those people would use that creative energy and that stick-to-itiveness for good, we would all work ourselves out of a job,
right? We'd have an economy that's booming, which we don't have right now. But anyway, we would have. Well, and know that you also support a lot of local nonprofits, so I think we should cover that too. Talk about what kind of endeavors in that area that the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay has.
Well, the last time we talked, we were just at the end of our competitive grant cycle. And we do that once a year, and that's where we invite any nonprofit in our 5-county area to apply to us for one of our unrestricted grants, the money that people have left us and said, you go find the best use for. And so those grants we give around what we call community vibrancy, which includes the environment and the arts and those kinds of endeavors.
Yes, could be included in that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those sort of endeavors around education, around mental well-being, around empowering women and girls, and economic mobility. And there's overlap in all of those things. We were at a presentation last week at the Waimama Opportunity Center that Enterprising Latinas just opened. And we have worked closely with them over the years, and we're so proud of them for getting that facility up and running. And I had the honor of presenting a check for $50,000 at that ceremony for programming that will go on there. And it's for their workforce development coaching, but so that covers economic mobility. That covers empowering women and girls. It also covers mental well-being, because if you know that you can provide for your family, your mental state is going to be a lot better. It covers education, and it also covers community vibrancy, because that neighborhood is so much more prosperous and vibrant because Enterprising Latinas is training women to be able to open a bakery or start a tailoring business, or all of those kinds of things. And so that's just one aspect of what we do. But throughout the year, we work with the fund holders, we work with our donors to be their philanthropic advisors, to say to them, hey, we know you care about empowering women. You should know what this group is doing. You might want to get involved with your money, with your volunteerism, with your support in other ways. So we're a matchmaker.
Well, and that area down there in Waimama, my mom and I were driving through there recently, and on the way to somewhere, and I said to her, in 5 years or less, we will not even recognize this community, because there is so much building and development going on in that area, which is going to present many, many opportunities for entrepreneurs, business owners, that community, even though they have a long-range plan, I know that, and they're very serious about their long-range plan. It's just not even. So all this groundwork you're doing is going to have a huge payoff.
Well, because as growth comes in, as more people move either south from Tampa or from Michigan or wherever, you have to be sure you don't lose the fabric of the community.
Absolutely.
You don't lose the heart of the community, and you don't displace the people who have made it possible for the community to grow and thrive.
Exactly, and all the small business owners.
The small business owners, the people who work in the service industry, all of those kinds of things. And those are conversations that are happening at different levels all over our region. I was at a meeting earlier this week in St. Petersburg where it's the same discussion of, as downtown continues to grow, are we displacing the people who serve in the restaurants? And you know, that's some of what we're looking at in Waimama and in other areas. So that's part of our work, to be that philanthropic partner to help be sure that we make those connections and bring those people together who can look out for and protect the interests of everyone in the community.
We only have a few minutes left, so I always like to give everyone an opportunity, if they have something they want to directly say to our watching and listening audience. Now's your opportunity, so look into that camera and have at it.
Well, first I want to say thank you to Kim for giving me this opportunity. As you can probably tell, I love talking about the work that the people we work with, the fund holders and donors to Community Foundation Tampa Bay, make possible. And I guess my ask today is, if you are interested in having a conversation about how you can get involved, either in your estate plan, or we always like to say, have fun with philanthropy and charitable giving while you're with us, and that's a great way to know what you want your legacy to be when you're no longer with us on this earth. But there's a whole team of people like me who are here ready to talk to you and figure out what's the best way to get you involved and to protect your charitable legacy in the future.
And how would they initiate that conversation, Wilma?
Well, you can go to our website, which is cftampabay.org, and there's a form there that you can fill out that says, hey, give me a call, I'd like to have a conversation. Or you can call our office. The number is also on our website. It is 813-272-1985. I have to stop and think about it these days. Yeah. Or you can email info@cftampabay.org and someone will get back to you. But take a look at our new website. It's very bright and vibrant, and that's what we try to be. Bright and vibrant, just like we want our community to be.
Well, you are bright and vibrant, Wilma, and I appreciate you so much being here with me today on Connecting with Kim. So that's all we have time for today. I want to thank my guest, Wilma Norton, who is the VP of Community Connections for the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay. And I want to thank you for tuning in and joining us on the show today. Connecting with Kim is always trying to bring you information about people, places, and things that can make your life better and living in our little corner of paradise. And I also want to thank my sponsor, the Spring of Tampa Bay, for the beautiful on-air wardrobe that they provide me for every show. And I want you to go visit the Spring Boutique at the corner of Swan and Henderson, because all the net proceeds for not only the Spring Boutique but their thrift store on North Willow go to support their mission of providing sanctuary and services to victims and survivors of domestic abuse here in our Tampa Bay area. So that's all we have time for today. Come back next week for another edition of Connecting with Kim. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.